cryptids. They're spooky, scary, and potentially real. So let's take a look at one from each county in England. In Cornish folklore, the Owlman is described as a humanoid owl flying over the church of St. Mornan. St. Mornan is a village in South Cornwall, and this church is notorious for where the Owlman was seen flying. In April 1976, two girls that were on holiday would report seeing a large feathered man on top of the church building. Another report was made later on into the year which described it as a big owl with pointed ears as big as a man. From 1976 to 1995, the Owlman would terrorize the town, and in 2000, owl sounds could be heard from the church. Although a strange case, the place is also known for having a lot of barn owls, so it was most likely a barn owl. It could have also been an eagle owl, as it could explain the size and pointed ears. There are many ghost stories in Dartmoor, but the hairy hands of Dartmoor is probably the most popular. In the area of Postbridge, many drivers and cyclists since 1910 reported that a pair of invisible hands took them off-road. In 1924, a woman in a caravan reported a pair of hairy hands trying to pull away her caravan. When she made a cross sign, they went away. Although the previous case was never solved, most cases were described to be people who were unfamiliar with the track losing control. Exmoor, a place renowned for its beauty and its beast. I've done a short explaining this cryptid, but I'll explain it in a nutshell. Farmer gets his sheep attacked by big cat. People get sent to hunt for this cat, but it is never found. Someone finds fossils of said cat, but proven to be seal. In the parish of Shapwick in the early 1700s, a fishmonger was walking down the streets when suddenly something fell out of his bag. The locals described it as a monster, and they threat from going to any fishmonger. What do you think the monster was? If you said crab, then yes, you're correct. Because the locals have never seen a crab, they thought that it was just a monster from the depths of hell. Well, I'm over exaggerating, but anyways, next county. On the night of July 2012, two people were coming home from a party. As they drove back, they saw a man covered in swan feathers. The driver swerved and beeped at the bird, and all of a sudden it vanished. The boys think they hit it. They went behind the car and saw nothing. No blood, no feathers, and just nothing. A few years later, they got speaking with an old friend in town, and suddenly they brought up the conversation about a birdman. They both had similar experiences. Although a strange case, it was most likely a swan, but still doesn't explain the size. Now moving on to the next county. The Beast of Dean, also known as Moose Pig, is a cryptid hailing from the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire. Sightings of a large boar in Gloucestershire during 1802 suggested that the Beast of Dean was a real thing. This boar was also reported to break trees, hedges, and fences. In the village of Parkend, local hunters managed to capture and kill the beast, but the hunters agreed that the beast was not a boar or any indigenous species in England, and sightings stopped in 1807. Suddenly, a sighting in 1998 suggested that a beast was roaming the spaces between Parkend and Bean. It was stated that the woods were eerily quiet, but suddenly a low mumble could be heard from the bushes, and a giant beast came out of it. Frantically, the man ran away, and the beast's size was never known. Though not confirmed, it was most likely a wild boar. Now, on to our next county. In the early 1990s, there was reported sightings of a bear being found in the Witchwood area. It was described as having dark brown fur and being as large as a sheepdog. Today, the case has never been solved, and now, going on to our next county. As a businessman was walking his dog through West Berkshire, the creature was described as being dark grey with a neck similar to a swan and a bushy tail. It also had the head of a deer. The only animal that fits this description is an alpaca, and that raises a question. Why is there an alpaca in the British streets? Our questions may never be answered, but let's move on to the next county. The Grampus is described as a tree-dwelling porpoise lurking the English churchyard of Highclere. It was said to make a cacophony of guttural noises and, even more alarmingly, chase individuals, mainly young women. Although more folklore than cryptid, it's still interesting nonetheless. Now on to our next county. At Lake Common, Sandown, 2 children are at the lake when they heard sounds similar to a siren or ambulance alarm. The children found a mix between a clown, an alien, and a robot, had a shy but friendly demeanor, and talked to the children for 30 minutes. Apparently it was called Sam and he was afraid of humans. Although a strange case, it was most likely either a human in a costume or a hoax. Now on to our next county. The Knucker is a water dragon that lives in bottomless pits around Sussex. It was spread around many towns, including Lyminster, where it ate livestock and even villagers. This led to the decision that it had to be slain, but none of the legends can agree on how the dragon was slain. Although more folklore than cryptid, we could finally move on to our next county. In the Farnham area, during the 1950s, reports of a puma roaming around began to rise. Sightings increased during the 1960s, and at the Godalming police station alone, there were 362 reports of this puma in 2 years alone. In 1970, paw prints were found in the snow, and in 1984, hair samples at Pease Lake were identified to be a puma. Sightings still go on today, and the most likely reason for these sightings is that there's an escaped puma from the London Zoo, but that's just a theory. Now on to our next county. In the early 1800s, a strange figure was popping up around suburban London. He was given the name Spring-Heeled Jack as he could leap very long distances. He was described to have a terrifying appearance, with clawed hands, eyeballs of fire, and a black cloak. The last sighting of him was in Liverpool during 1904, and it's still a mystery as to who it was. Now, next county. Again, I've done a short explaining this one, but I'm tired. Let's just move on to the next county. In the town of Southend, there was a recorded rat man walking the passenger streets. The rat man takes 2 forms, a ghost and a mutant child. The ghost is the most common story told. It involves a homeless man who lived under an underpass, sleeping in the cold with his blanket. One night, teenagers took his blanket and beat him half to death, and he died of the cold. His body was then gnawed on by rats, and locals reported high squealing noises coming from the underpass. The other version involves the mayor who committed adultery being punished for his crime by becoming a child that had the snout and worm-like tail of a rat. He developed a taste for human flesh, and so he ordered people to build a blockage to the underpass where he lurked. However, this is more schoolyard folklore than an actual cryptid. So next county. During 1990 in Hatsfield, a man was walking down a park when suddenly he encountered a dog man. That's really it. There's really nothing too Hertfordshire when it comes to cryptids. Next county. Again, another short story. A deer hunter went hunting in Wicken Woods when he saw a giant ape lurking in the woods. And that's basically it. Next county. Yet again, another short story. Sally the Witch is more folklore than cryptid, coming from an 82-verse poem. It is said to haunt Flitwick Manor. That's basically all to it. Next county. Finally, my county. The Goatman of Staverton was sighted in February 2022. It was said to be a 6-foot tall, thin bear that crossed the road. Ever since, there's never been another sighting. Alright, next county. In Slow Hill Lane during the 1900s, a report of a dog-monkey hybrid haunting the place was made. It was said to have the body of a black sheepdog and the face of a monkey, but since World War II, sightings have stopped. Next county. The black shuck is a ghastly black dog that roams the coastline of East Anglia. And that's basically it. I can't find anything else on it, so sorry. Next county. The Dogman is a potentially 5 to 7 foot werewolf seen around Lincolnshire in the 1600s to the most recent sighting in 2021. While seeming passive, there have been a few records of it attacking people. It is speculated that it has a diet of rabbits and other wild creatures. Although a short story, we can move on to our next county. The Barghest is described as a monstrous black dog with huge claws and teeth. Probably the most notable story is about the Barghest in Troller's Guild in the Yorkshire Dales. The man ventured to the horrid guild of Limestone Hill to confront the Barghest using ritual magic. His lifeless body was then found later. That's the end of the story. Now, next county. In June 1897 in Winchester, a man shot what he thought was a fox. After closer inspection, it was said not to be a fox, but more of a cat with pheasant-like wings. Sadly, it was never preserved for future study, so the question remains, what was it? If our questions are unanswered, we might as well go to our next county. In the town of Beckenham, a farmer apparently stumbled upon a red-eyed hound. Apparently, the hound made the farmer go mad, and eventually the farmer was paralysed. Although a short story with no context, we can finally move on to our next county. In Dane Hills, in a cave, lies some sort of boogeyman. Black Annis is said to roam the countryside, eating children and lambs at night. Many stories of her exist, but this video would be too long to explain all of them. So next county. Once again, another short story. In Maxstoke, a big cat has been sighted, but I have not been able to find a date. It was apparently said to have a leopard coat, but that's basically it. I can't find anything else. Next county. Another short story. The Eagle Man was an eagle-like figure that appeared when two women were walking their dog, but since then, no other reports have been recorded. Anyways, next county. Because there's really nothing to Birmingham, I'll just give a short explanation. Basically, a woman was convicted of killing a baby that was suffocated. There. Next county. The man monkey, another short story, was seen throughout the 19th century. And that's basically it. I can't find anything else. Next county. In the forest of Delamere during the 1970s, a dog-like creature was roaming the woods. It was said to look like an Alsatian dog with foxtail, so it was most likely another Alsatian dog. With that explanation, we can move on to our next county. Once again, another short myth. The liver birds of the Royal Liver Building are said to come alive if a virgin woman and a man make love in front of them. That's basically it. I know, disgusting, but next county. Another short story. This shuck was believed to have the soul of a man who shot various people. That's it. I know. Next county. In the marshes and bogs of Lancashire lies a supernatural creature. The Grindylow is a creature that pulls children into the deep waters of the marshes and bogs. This was a story likely created by parents to stop children going into the marshes and bogs. Next county. Yet again, another cat. The beast of Cumbria is said to hunt farm animals at night, but it's basically a north next small beast. Let's just go to our next county. More of a legend than a cryptid. The Lambton worm is a giant eel or lamprey caught by someone named John in the River Ware. He eventually left the lamprey to grow in a well and forgot about it. Once the worm grew up, it became a menace to the society of Durham, eating livestock and killing villagers. It was then slain by John a few years later. There are many stories about this worm, but we can't cover them all, so let's go to our next county. 1800s on the River Tweed, a 1.8 meter long green shark was discovered. And that's basically it. That's all the counties in England. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. It helps me a lot because this video took way too long to make. And it was really painful to make as well. So thanks for watching.